We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's February 27th here in Seoul. I'm Shin Yeun, and you're watching News Generation. Joining me in the studio is Park Ki-hoon
Thanks for having me.
and Chiji.
Good morning.
All right, now both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. As usual, let's start with our news feed, which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Scientists have revealed a new complete fossil that's 5 meters in length and has long been considered to resemble a dragon for its extremely long neck. The creature dates back 240 million years back to the Triassic period. It's called the Dinocephalosaurus orientalis, a long aquatic reptile whose fossils were found mostly in southern China. This is the first time researchers assembled all of the prehistoric beast parts together. Moving on, to tackle rising food prices, a handful of universities have been giving out breakfast to their college students at only 75 cents per meal. This year, 43 more universities have decided to participate, expanding the total number of schools who provide this type of service to 186. The policy aims to feed more university students an affordable breakfast while also encouraging more people to eat rice. Lastly, South Korea has entered its second week since doctors have gone on a nationwide strike against the government's decision to expand med school admission slots from next year. Around 10,000 doctors have handed in their resignations since. Trainee doctors have not shown up to work. What's adding on to the medical catastrophe is some 12,600 medical school students handing in their leave of absence forms as well. The Education Ministry said, easily put, 2 out of 3 med school students in the country have done so, and most schools have sided with their students postponing the start of med school student semesters from February to March, but there are also some schools that haven't processed these students' leave of absence requests. Now, in this case, students may fail the whole semester given that they would be considered absent from their lectures, and because of this, around 400 med school students have retracted their leave of absence requests, and we're seeing this headline develop day by day. Now, here in the studio, what do you think about this ongoing medical crisis? We're seeing a shortage of doctors in places. We've even seen some 80-year-old patients die on the bed without a doctor there to train them. What do you think about this, and where would you like to see this go?
Well, I've mentioned this earlier in our previous episode, but this collective action by doctors is unique to our country because other developed countries, in fact, they're trying to increase the number of doctors in line with the increasing number of the elderly citizens in each country. And I still believe that doctors shouldn't base their actions on their individual financial reasons only. In fact, they're at the front line and they're supposed to be the ones who understand the issue of doctor shortages the best. And also, like you mentioned, the worst problem is that this protest is negatively affecting all the patients out there because we're seeing delays in surgeries as well as hospitalizations and also cancellations of appointments. And however, I've also read this article that some medical trainees are actually secretly attending their workplace to just help out with the doctors who are still there and to take care of the patients.
Exactly. Once again, I would like to emphasize on our episode that it's not all of the doctors that have handed in their resignations or not all med school students who've handed in a absence of leave form. We are seeing still a minority of them there. Now here in the studio, Kyung, what do you think about this headline?
I think doctors in Korea are showing what it would really be like when there's a shortage of doctors in hospitals by going on a big strike like this. This is a tricky situation, and I think the main question is today more important than today 10 years later? And I don't think there's an absolute answer to this. Obviously, for doctors, their jobs, high salary could be on the line, but it's also their pride, effort, and sense of duty. Treating patients that should not be ignored. I think the government is thinking ahead of the current demographics of our country, and I think they're heading in the right direction, but at the same time, they should come up with better ways to communicate with the medical staff to make steady changes to that actually benefits and satisfies both parties moving forward.
Exactly. Like most things, I think all conflict needs effective communication. Now, we're going to switch gears to our main discussion of the day now. We're living amid high inflation and soaring living costs. Up till a few years ago, this discouraged many millennials and Gen Z from trying to even save up. That's why we had terms like YOLO, you only live once, pop up. But as these economic difficulties continue to last, we're seeing much much more conservative spending patterns. So we're going to start our discussion from here. Do you guys think it's true that our generation is saving up much more compared to the past or our previous generations due to prolonged inflation and soaring living costs?
Yes, yes, yes. People in their 20s and 30s are spending much less than before, including myself. I think our consumption behavior has changed from the COVID-19 lockdown period. Back then, many youngsters, including myself, were feeling very frustrated staying at home and wanted to compensate and pamper ourselves by so-called flexing, spending our money on luxury goods, traveling abroad, dining in at fancy, expensive restaurants, and so on. However, as we get towards the endemic, high inflation and continuous rate hikes took its toll and eventually made us close our wallets. So to give our viewers a better understanding of how much we don't spend compared to other age groups, let's take a look at the screen. As you can see from the bar graph, people in their 20s spent much less than those in their 60s in accordance with the rise in interest rates, almost a tenfold. The figures show annual drop in consumption for every 1% increase in benchmark interest rate. Now, these numbers clearly show that our generation is affected the most with the economic downturn. Also, with the ongoing war in Ukraine and in the Middle East as well, we are living in a world of uncertainty and exposed to volatility of commodity prices. So it only seems natural for us to, spend less and try to find ways of saving up more by changing our spending patterns on a daily basis.
So it's quite interesting. In the past, because of this volatility and instability, we try to use as much money as we can, thinking even though we save up, we can't buy a house, we can't get married or have a kid. But nowadays, I think our generation has taken a shift and we're now trying to save up more.
That's right.
Why so?
Well, it's especially so for those who have taken out large sums of loans, large loans, to purchase a house during the pandemic, which was a common practice among especially the young people here in the country. And we called it the 영끌족, or really devoting your whole soul, literally, to get a house.
Sucking your whole soul out just for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So rising interest rates have put a very big strain on all of these people who have taken out the loans. And so as a result, many individuals are choosing to save up and use less money, cut back on their spending really. And when millennials and Gen Zs first entered the workforce, in fact, the country was seeing low growth in the economy, which is why it's really challenging to earn money. And at the same time, prices have soared and it's really expensive to eat out or buy anything really. And this has led to the culture of young people really saving as much as possible, even engaging in communities where people would save up together and share their own stories of their everyday lives, saving up, trying to live off just the minimum amount of money that they have. And this trend of frugality has actually become even more common and has expanded among the younger generation.
Exactly. And as common as it's becoming, I would now like to take a look at how exactly we're trying to save up and spend less.
To give you some examples, young people using less delivery apps and not being able to go to the hospital even when they're sick. So food delivery market has been a growing sector over many years, but it experienced its first ever negative turnover last year with a drop of 0.6% according to Statistics Korea. This is obviously due to the rise in food prices and delivery fees. People in their 20s and 30s were the main users and consumers of these apps, and statistics show a falling trend of the total amount spent on this online platform. Another change in consumer behavior we're seeing in young people is that they're reluctant to go to hospitals. So from a report released by National Youth Policy Institute, 4 out of 10 youths said they couldn't go to the hospital over the past year because they were either busy with work or just thought it was a bit of a waste of money to go to the hospital. They were avoiding regular checkups as well due to the high cost and relied on over-the-counter medicines when they felt sick. So the two ways I mentioned are only the tip of the iceberg, but it is definitely a worrying sign for young people just like us, as we have so much to look forward to in our lives. But except like right now, it seems very bleak, but I'm sure there will be another rebound and we'll see better days.
Fingers crossed. Yep. So canceling out our subscription or like erasing delivery apps on my phone. I did that too, but it didn't last for too long. And then also not going to the hospital. Are there any other things that sort of show how we try to save up our money?
Well, other than the ones that Ki-hoon just introduced, the younger generation is really shifting away from engaging in expensive leisure and sports activities that we once used to enjoy a lot. For instance, things like omakase or expensive sports such as golf, which used to be popular among younger people, are slowly losing their appeal. And even the sales of golf wares have dropped among the younger generation as well. Instead, they prefer small luxury goods. They're not giving up on the luxury, though, I guess, but it's just become a lot smaller or extravagant ones, which they can enjoy without having to spend too much money. For example, popular options would be like small wallets or like perfumes, things like that.
I would like to agree. I think our generation, we didn't give up on going for the luxury items, but I think it also has to do with investment. I'm not really sure about perfume. Maybe that's because you give like instant pleasure. You really spend your money and you feel like that scent goes with you for a very long time now. But I think luxury items can work as an investment tactic, which can add on to our very frugal spending habits. Now, we asked our viewers if their consumer habits changed amid high living costs and food prices as well. If you take a look at the screen, you can find out what 3 of them had to share with us. Let's start with Rex. Rex said, by making a list, I've learned to prioritize what I need to buy first and avoid impulse buying. Planning out my schedule in advance also helps in saving not only time, but money. James said, I've heard that the Japanese budgeting method of using a kaikeibo journal has gained popularity in recent years. Many said new spending habits for me may be only relying on buying a lot of goods online because of the free shipping fees, and it may vary when they can buy a lot. Now, I can tell that all of our viewers are also trying to jump onto this frugal spending trend. Then why do you guys think we're seeing such patterns, especially among millennials and Gen Z these days?
Right, so we are known as the thumb generation.
We are.
And it's become a common thing to share like our everyday lives on social media. So while things, come and go very fast, a new trend that we are experiencing right now among the younger generation is sharing our daily consumption habits and encouraging each other to become wiser spenders. So, like you mentioned before, it's become almost impossible to own our own houses, let alone get married and raise children. So I think many young people, including myself, have turned our eyes on finding ways to keep us happy and motivated by focusing more on small things, like small luxury goods that doesn't cost too much money like on a daily basis. So I think things change, but I'm sure, like I said before, there will be a bright future.
Exactly. And we've been talking about this a few times on News Generation. I don't know if all of our viewers remember, but there was a time when we talked about how we're spending so much because we feel like we can't save up. And then there were times when we would go into these beggar rooms on Kakao Talk or chatting applications where we would save up even $1 for just a basic drink. So we can see these consumption trends go on, like coming back and forth. But why do you think right now, as of now, millennials and Gen Z are trying to become more stingent?
Well, for one reason, unlike the older generation, the younger generation, they have limited capital. And like I said, it's really difficult to earn money, as well as we're facing surge in prices. And the economy hasn't grown much since the millennials and Gen Zs entered the workforce. And as a result, their spending patterns are significantly impacted by external factors such as the rise in interest rates and prices as well. And so they've started to really shift away from that YOLO mindset. And they're also very concerned about their life after retirement because the government is facing pension issues and they're unsure. It can't be guaranteed that the government will provide sufficient pensions for our generation when we become old and we retire. So we've talked about this in another episode before too, like how we already prepare for retirement. And that's why the younger generation is trying to save up and make sure that they can prepare for then
I
now.
see. We're
Yeah.
becoming more smart consumers and investors. And I don't know about you guys, but I think my consumption pattern really changes based on what I see on the news and also word of mouth with what my friends are doing. Sometimes they say I'm using a lot. I'm like, oh, what are you spending on? And I go to leisure activities with them. But whenever I have a really good friend that really saves up, it helps me because it makes me look back and reflect on my own investment patterns. And that's what we're going to be doing right now. We're going to be including a very smart consumer and investor who's a fellow Gen Z in our talks. Stay tuned for our live interview. We're now going to talk to a fellow Gen Z who's known among her friends to have frugal habits. It's Chun Se-min living in Seoul. Welcome, Se-min.
Hello.
All right, Se-min, so how did you earn your reputation as the friend who spends less and saves more? I think that's a great quality you have. Can you tell us how exactly you save up?
To begin with, for day-to-day habits, I try to eat at home and cook as much as I can. Eating out and delivering food has become more expensive, so preparing a packed lunch or bringing homemade coffee can save me a lot of money. I also try to save money by refraining from non-necessary expenditures, such as shopping for things that I already have. If I do have to buy something, I lean towards more durable goods that will last longer. I wait for the discount event and buy the goods only when it is on sale. And in regards to a long-term plan, I do have a separate bank account for my savings every month. I save at least around 20 to 30% of my income before I spend it. I always try to keep an eye out for banks that offer higher interest rates on savings accounts and deposit my money there. I additionally signed up for a housing subscription savings account. This will allow me to become eligible for a new apartment if I deposit enough money into the account and maintain it for a certain period of time.
Well, Se-min, I need a friend just like you right
I know.
The next question is, what made you decide to save up more and spend less?
Living in the city has become increasingly costly, from eating out to occasionally taking the taxi. Inflation has even affected everyday grocery shopping, so I am definitely thinking twice when I reach for the seasonal fruits at the mart. But most importantly, I think expensive housing is the core problem. Having to pay expensive monthly rent is a big burden for young people living in the city, especially when the job market now is very unstable and difficult. Paying rent takes out a great portion of my income, and after that, there really is not enough to spend. Due to these circumstances, I have to constantly remind myself to save in order to prepare for future expenditures such as my education and for possible medical bills.
I see. Well, are there any tips that you'd like to share with us as to how you save up so well?
I've learned from personal experience that if I am extra conscious and careful each and every time I pull up my credit card, I am able to spend less and save more. The question I ask myself is, do I really need this? I try to be more of an ethical consumer online and offline these days, reminding myself of the environmental impact of my shopping choices. So my advice to viewers would be to do the same, to give more thought every day before making the choice of consuming too many material goods. So turning to alternatives such as buying vintage clothing would be an example in this aspect.
I see. Thank you so much, Se-min. While I was hearing your interview, I kept reflecting back on my own spending patterns, and it's much more easier said than done. But to see you take it into action is really inspirational. Thank you so much. It was a great, helpful interview today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I would like to end our discussion by sharing our own know-how, I guess, on what's the wisest and smartest way to save our money during these economically straining times. And I'd like to start by saying, for me, what I try to do, though I'm not the best at it, is I try to journal myself my
really?
expenditures. It's really difficult, though. And a lot of my friends say I should use like my smartphone apps, but the only reason why I don't do that is I'm sort of penalizing myself every single time I use too much by handwriting it down.
Okay.
And actually, it's really nice because if you go analog, you can really see how much you spend and reflect each and every time based on when you write down
So I
the
have a
figures.
quick question.
Yeah.
Are you spending more than you're earning right now, or
That is
the
a
opposite?
secret, but I think you might know the answer.
Minus.
It's minus all the
Minus
time,
all the
which is why I'm penalizing myself. But what about you? What's the smart way for you to do?
Right. I think I agree with many of the things that Semin just mentioned. But the economy will take some time to fully recover from the pre-pandemic situation. So I think thinking a little more ahead by listing your income, like just what you said, and your expenses, and finding places where you can actually reduce more or even take out can really help you alleviate the stress you receive from soaring living costs. Things won't change immediately, so no matter how much you stress over it, it's not going to change right now. So I think continuing to work hard and learning to appreciate the things you have rather than the things you don't have or things you want could be another good method. And I think also looking for simple, healthy activities that doesn't require much money, or actually none, to be honest, like going for a walk, reading, or even writing a journal. That's what I do, and it's helped me a lot to really think less about all the stresses that come with having not enough money at the moment. But I think just be wise, be a wise consumer, and like people like Semi, I think she's heading in the right track, and
She
we
is.
should really learn from her as well.
She really put the nail in the bud, and I think it's because she did a lot of research as well. And as you mentioned, Kyun, there's so many free options out there for you to enjoy your leisure time. Make sure to do enough research. I think that's another key thing. What about you, Jihi? Any tips?
Well, I really like the tip that Taemin gave us to think twice before you buy something. If you really need it, you should buy it. But if you have it already, then it's a waste to buy it again,
is.
right? And personally, while it's important to be organized with your earnings and spending, I think being unconditionally frugal can really limit your life experiences. You can't really enjoy life, and it can also negatively impact the economy because we need consumption for the economy to keep running. So it's not recommended to overspend beyond your means, of course, but it's best to spend within your budget to really be able to enjoy your life without putting too much pressure on yourself to save up all the time.
Finding that balance seems to be difficult, but at the end of the day, maybe having like short-term goals could be helpful. For instance, as you mentioned, if you want to do a leisure activity that might cost you a lot, maybe have that goal and try to save up within 1 or 2 weeks. You can feel satisfaction right after. Now, hopefully, today's discussion really facilitated for you to have better consuming habits. In the meantime, we'll be here every day from 9:30 to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you more topics young people are talking about. Special thanks to Park Ki-hoon
It's always a pleasure.
and Choi Ji-hee.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are News Generation.